Everyone knows about the famous American Revolution when tea was thrown and shots were fired. But did you know that Canada also had a short rebellion against the Crown during the year of 1837? Canadians agreed that not only should the Americans to the south be free of Britain's unfair taxes and ruling, but they wanted a taste of freedom in the Great White North as well.
Throughout the early 1800s, Canadians throughout the colony were fed up with the lack of freedom and rights that were not being provided by the British government. People hated the lack of free economy. They couldn't stand having no language and rights. They couldn't participate in free trade and had no access to a true capitalist economy. A rebellion was brewing, and all that was left to be decided was whose side everyone was on.
Canada's rebellion was focused on widespread unhappiness with British rule in the colony. Though it had an elected assembly, the decisions made were actually decided by a small group of British men, including the governor, that called themselves the Family Compact. These people could reject any ideas or actions created by the assembly if they wanted to. Way to go, Britain. This, of course, made the people mad, and so the Reform Party was created. These men were strictly against the British government and wanted change.
I'm a little upset.
And why be that, Robert?
The British are being unfair to us.
Well, let's go do something about it.
I'm making a list of grievances. Who's with me?
I'll rally my buddies and let's show the Brits that we mean business, just like the boys down south.
Hopefully we don't get hung.
The leader of this group was William Mackenzie, a Scottish-born politician with quite a temper. He became the Reform Party's main speaker and naturally became the rebellion's leader. The battles they supposedly fought were not as impressive as their motives. The so-called rebellion consisted of 2 confrontations and 1 little outburst with the help of the Americans. Other than that, it was pretty quiet. After the last battle, most of the rebels escaped down south, along with Mackenzie himself.
The rebellion in Lower Canada was actually really similar to the rebellion in Upper Canada. The government was just as annoying with their whole oligarchy thing, and the people were getting just as angry. Some of the differences were that instead of being called the Family Compact, the political group went by the name of Chateau Clique, which was an attempt to sound fancy, called themselves the Castle Club. They were unfairly taxing the people and collecting money for their selfish selves instead of building roads. Also, the French Canadians were still scared of losing their language even though they were still under the Quebec Act.
The British, though, were indirectly trying to assimilate them by calling people over from inland to move into Lower Canada. Louis-Joseph Papineau, a lawyer born in Quebec, was elected Speaker of the Assembly in 1815 and wrote a huge list of resolutions, 92 to be exact, that would be sent to Britain for review. The British government, at its finest, completely ignored Papineau's list, and after 3 long years, they did actually respond. But that wasn't the response the Canadians wanted. The British had created their own 10 set of revolutions, and all of Papineau's ideals were rejected. Gee, I wonder why people hated Great Britain.
They're still taxing us from their expensive defeat in the 13 colonies. When will they free us from their costly wars?
It is unfair and greedy of the British.
Something must be done about it.
We will march against them.
To death or to liberty.
I will rally my men.
And I the same.
Together we shall put an end to this tyranny.
The actual fighting began almost immediately, but it didn't last more than a month. The French Canadians underestimated Great Britain war-wise. I don't know why they did. And were simply not trained enough to take one of the world's most powerful empires in combat. After a couple of insignificant battles in the countryside, the British were able to overwhelm the French until they surrendered. To sum it all up, there were 6 battles that left 325 dead, 27 of them soldiers and the rest rebels.
In the end, everything was kind of the same. The rebellion didn't do much except join the Canadas together in the Act of Union. That was signed in 1841. Basically, the people in Lower Canada lost any hope of having representation in the government, and French was completely shoved to the side, and English was made the official language.
You saying swine, you don't stand a chance. British victory!